Welcome back, thanks for tuning in. This is now part 2 for this build. In part 1, I built the framework where all these drawers are going to fit. Part 2, it's going to be all about the acrylic. I'm going to try and cover all the details you need to know for working with acrylic, from cutting to welding and everything else. If I miss anything, leave a comment below and I'll try and answer it there. Or if it's too involved, I may have to put a separate video for it. Now, the first thing I always get comments on is people tell me I have my blade set way too high. That actually is essential when you're cutting acrylic, because if you have a low attack angle, it deflects the acrylic up and you end up with a non-square edge, and that makes it much more difficult to weld. The other thing is, any fine-tooth blade is fine, just make sure it's sharp. This one's getting a bit dull, but it's still working quite well. And as you see, I'm using a face shield here to hold this down, mostly because of that long straight edge. Keeps it nice and straight and firmly in place. The other thing I noticed, which is kind of nice, is it prevented all those little teeny chips getting into my hair, which is a side benefit. Now the other thing is, cut all of any particular dimension at one setting. I do all of it all at once. That way they're all the same, because when you're welding acrylic, there's very little forgiveness for dimensions that are different. There are other things you can use besides what I'm using here, which is methylene chloride, that are a bit more viscous and can take care of that sort of thing. But I don't like any of those. This is actually the best system for doing that. So I use a syringe, you'll notice, and mostly when you get methylene chloride, you'll get this little bottle. I really don't like those little bottles. The problem with them is that they're very sloppy, and you end up with, smudge marks on the acrylic because of drips, and it just makes it so it's not a nice, clean weld and build. It ends up being quite, well, from my perspective, amateurish. So there you go. I always keep it in a ground glass stoppered bottle so I don't have any evaporation. The other nice thing about the syringe is it prevents any excess use of methylene chloride, so there's very little of it that actually gets into the air, which is another thing. And there's obviously the strong fan blowing and a bunch of other stuff. I covered some of that in Acrylic Basics, and yeah, it's just minor details. And that thing I'm just showing here is in regular time. The reason why I'm showing you that is that's probably the part I like the least about working with acrylic, and that is getting the membranes off. And the other thing you can see I'm doing here right now, acrylic, especially freshly done, has a lot of static cling. And you notice I moved the acrylic to beyond the edge of the table there, and that just helps make sure that the edge is perfectly aligned, because the first one's the hardest part. Because what's happening here is I need to make sure it's set properly, make sure it's right on the edge so I don't end up with any gaps sticking out the other side. And the other thing I have to be careful about, of course, is this is 1/8 inch, so it's not straight, it's not flat, it will curve, and you need to be careful to make sure all the way along the whole weld you end up with it nice and straight. So this is a little bit later on. I flipped the camera around because my arm was in the way a lot, and you don't really get to see it. And this is much closer, and you get to see how the bead works. And this is what I watch for when I do this. You can see it wicking in there, and that means you're getting a good weld, and that's the most important part about this. And these drawers go together really quite well. The problem I've noticed in making these sorts of videos is it takes longer, almost twice as long, to glue these up when I'm actually recording them. I mean, it's amazing how much time it takes to set up the camera, make sure the angles are all right and everything else, and do this sort of thing. Because normally what I do when I'm putting these together is I assembly line it. I just do one thing, let it cure for a few moments while I set up another one, and it's very difficult to set up a good angle where you have that all happening when you're just doing one of them. The other thing I didn't mention here is, because these things are not straight, the easiest thing to do for this is make sure that the bow is towards the outside, and that way when you put a little bit of pressure on it, it actually straightens out quite well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And all I do here is I just put my hand on top of it, it holds down both edges, and then I just run the bead, and we're good. And that's basically all there is to it. That is one of a great many drawers I put together. These are the first two pieces I made. These are the wooden frames, and these are the first 6 drawers. Off camera, you're going to see it in a few moments. I made a complete new set of these. I think I'm going to need more than 6, so I ended up with 12 altogether. And this thing you notice, that little tray I took out is one of the reasons why I picked these particular dimensions for these drawers. That fits into my screw case, the one I take out when I'm on a job site, and I wanted to make sure that that fit inside there. So there you go, that's it there. These are the drawers. Of course, I still need to make the handles for them. Still need to sand all that down. I need to make a framework for where these are all going to fit. But I wanted to show you that. That's the screw case, and you can see a lot of those are more than what I need. And so that's what I want to make. Some of this so I can store some of those, make that a little bit lighter. And there's all 12 there. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to put on the handles. Now, when I first weld these up, they're clear, of course, and there's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, this is for my shop, so it doesn't really matter. But I actually like it lightly sanded. I prefer a frosted coating on this. I suppose in the long run, that would be our household chihuahua going off there. I'm not going to restart this for that. But anyway, so what I'm going to do here is I just do a light sanding. It's best to do that light sanding manually. If you have ever tried to use a power tool of any kind to sand acrylic, you'll know what I mean, because it will very easily end up melting it instead of just sanding it. So there you go. It makes it. I mean, let me know what you think, but I prefer the one on the left. That's the frosted finish. And like I said, just a simple matter of it looking nice. Now, to weld these, it's very, very straightforward to weld these on the drawers. But what I'm going to do here is, that is 1/2 inch piece of ply, and then the one on top of it is a 3/4 inch. These are just random choices. It doesn't really matter. The 1/2 inch was simply just chosen because it's thick enough that lip that catches on the top part, which helps stop it from going too far when you close it. That doesn't touch the bottom. So now the 3/4 just brings it up just a little bit. I thought it looked nice. Again, this is just sort of random, and all I do here is just 2 little dots, little spot welds, because if you do a full bead, what will happen is it'll wick through, and then it will end up smearing on the outside. So what I'm going to do here is let that sit for about 4 or 5 seconds, and then gently pick it up. There we go. I'm being a little too gentle there. It's not that sensitive. Hold it up like that, rearrange the camera, and then run the full bead on both sides. Like I said, very straightforward. Now, normally what I would do here, and I'm going to show you my actual process for doing this in the next clip, I don't do one. I was thinking about this, and I was welding it, and I eyeballed it, and I made sure there wasn't any excess of methylene chloride that had already, just pooled there in the corner. Because what happens if you have too much there, and you do this, you end up with a drip. And any amount of methylene chloride touching the acrylic anywhere will end up with a smudge. It's impossible to stop. It takes microseconds for it to actually ruin the finish. So that's why I do it this way. The one that you see in the foreground is evaporating, and the one I'm just welding here, putting the tack weld on, I should say. I'm going to flip this up, and then I'm going to finish the full bead, and then while that one, I'll swap them, and while that one evaporates, I will put the other one in and start working on the next one. So it takes maybe 30-40 seconds for me to do one of these when I'm not filming. I film, I seem to take a lot more care at doing this, whereas I tend to just motor through these things when it's just me getting it done. There you go. That's it. Leave comments. Let me know what you think about all this. If I missed anything, definitely leave comments and questions. And I will see you in the next video, where I'm going to put the frame on this, get all the screws and bolts and everything in place, and get this set up. It's all right. See you in the next video. Bye for now.